Wait, what happens if your tenants don't pay utilities? Well, let's dive into it in today's Openroom University class. I'm Witing Bolu, co-founder of Openroom.ca. At Openroom, we collect and organize tenancy court orders across Canada to make rental outcomes transparent and searchable. We also report rent payment behavior to the credit bureaus like Equifax, helping responsible renters build their credit while ensuring accountability across the rest of the rental ecosystem. Our vision is to create a transparent and connected rental ecosystem that fairly rewards responsible members. We believe landlords are service providers ensuring safe, legal, and compliant homes. And on the other side, the tenants are responsible customers who should understand and meet their obligations in the rental lease agreement. Openroom University exists to make sure both sides have the knowledge they need to succeed. Let's get started. Today, we're hearing from Alliance Metering Solutions. Unlike regular utility companies, they install submeters so that tenants pay for exactly what they use, and actually what they use. No more guessing, no more inflated utility bills, and no more losing money on high consumption tenants. And unlike other submetering companies that only work with large developments, they specialize in smaller buildings too. Topics covered in today's session include submetering for water, hydro, gas, and EVs, electrical vehicles. Tenants take responsibility for their own usage so that you're not footing the bill. We're going to look at how it gets to lower maintenance fees and talk about zero upfront cost to implement. What? And then we're going to look at how it's a proven system backed by 110 plus years of industry experience. Let's go right after we hear a quick message from our sponsor.
As a landlord, making your properties stand out to renters is more important than ever. That's why Rentals.ca offers verified listings, a free service that confirms your identity through Persona, a trusted third-party verification provider. Verified landlords get a badge on their listings, instant posting, and up to 3 times more leads than non-verified listings. With thousands of renters searching daily, getting verified makes your property stand out as a trusted listing that gives renters peace of mind. Get verified and list for free today on Rentals.ca.
Right. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for coming tonight. And I most definitely appreciate any comments, any questions. You know, the PowerPoint is just kind of to guide us through the conversation, but I'm really interested in hearing your feedback. I've been doing this a long time. I've been doing suite metering since 2006, so it'll be 20 years next year. Not sure how that happened, but anyway. But most of my history has actually been on the condo side. So I know the rental side's a little different. It is why I'm taking the course that has been so incredibly educational. I feel your pain now. It is not easy. I could not imagine how hard it is dealing with tenants until I saw what was in the course and got a better understanding of what you all have to deal with. So it's a pretty amazing and sad situation. But hopefully submetering that we do can help. And I'm not trying to do that much of a sales presentation from Alliance. I'm going to have some questions for you guys because we're looking at some new programs that will help you all also. So at the very end, I'll ask you some questions, take a look at what we're considering and see if that's workable for you. But otherwise, it's a lot of kind of history of submetering, how the technology works, some questions around the RTA. There's, of course, the legalities, anything to do with rentals, the legalities are always a challenge. And the government, there were a few questionable actors about 15 years ago who were doing some bad things to their tenants. So the government kind of stepped in to make everything that much harder. So again, it's a lot of things that should be very common sense in the rental world in terms of conserving energy and so on is a lot harder now than it needs to be. But we have to deal with what we can deal with, and hopefully this all works well for you. I know it's definitely something that is very popular with landlords. I know there are some landlords out there who think that their tenants may not, do the best they can to conserve energy in their suites. So, passing those things over to the responsibility of the tenant is always a good thing. So and again, the government could make this all a little bit easier, but we have to deal with the regulatory environment that we have. So anyway, I will jump into it from there. And there is our mascot, who we have not named yet. We'll have to come up with a name for him. Alliance, we do try to be actually your best friend in metering. It's not just a tagline. We have, we're utility based. We started off with what was the Waterloo North Hydro Corporation. So basically everything we do is from a utility perspective. We are in this for the long haul. We want to make sure our customers are happy. We are an affiliate of the Innova Corporation, which is what the merged entity that was once Waterloo North Hydro and Kitchener Hydro merged together to form Innova. And one of the things, of course, we're governed by the Affiliate Relationship Code, which means we have to be cleaner than clean and purer than pure in all our dealings with our customers. Again, I've been doing this a very long time. I like to have my dealings with my customers to be as clean as possible. And I want this to be easy for all of you guys. Submetering should be the most boring thing that you even think of in your buildings. It should be just something that works in the background. You never have to think about it. You never have to think about it, getting your payments, collections from your tenants, any issues with billing, all of that. That is all about our worry. So again, we try to do it. We make our contracts simple. We make our proposals simple. We try to be fair in pricing for everybody. So, that is who we are and what we do. And like I said, hopefully Alliance can live up to that with you also. So let me just jump in. Oh, there's a good looking guy. So I started off with Enbridge Electric way back when, before it was even Enbridge Electric. Enbridge Electric was going to be the definitive submetering company in the industry. And for various reasons that ended up not happening. They merged with a couple of other companies along the way and are now a part of what is Metergy. So I was with them for my first 4 years. Then I have worked with a ton of utilities as kind of an industry expert on the metering side, so including Burlington Hydro, Viridian, Electra, so EnerSource and Horizon, Oakville Hydro, Grimsby Power, Halton Hills, Waterloo, Guelph Hydro. I've consulted Oshawa Power, and so everyone in your neck of the woods there now too. So a little bit of history on where this all came from. Back around 2004, the Ontario government was looking at options to conserve energy. And one of the things that they saw as low-hanging fruit was that I think there was at that point 1.2 million suites in the province, and there's again dramatically more than that, that were not individually metered. And the studies at the time showed that there could be at least 20% reduction in electricity use if the suites were individually metered. So what they started looking at is, how could this work? What could be done? And they started putting the wheels in motion to make it happen. So it was the document listed there, Electricity Transmission Distribution in Ontario Look Ahead. Then we got the Energy Conservation Leadership Act, and finally Bill 21, which was the Energy Conservation Responsibility Act of 2006. And what they did, and again, this was very helpful for the condos, was that they put regulations in place that regardless of the Condominium Act, if a condo corporation decided to switch to individual metering, then they could do so and not have to have a majority of the owners vote in favor of it. What they were actually looking at doing originally, and this of course fell just before the 2007 election, they were going to mandate that every building in Ontario be individually metered. And of course, right about a month and a half before the election happened, they decided not to do that. So they made it, they mandated all new construction be individually metered. And then they just decided that they would allow condominium corporations to individually meter if they chose to, but they weren't required to do that. The apartment sector, however, was left a little bit up in the air. So had they have done this, it would have been much cleaner, much easier. I had something pop up on my screen, didn't see what that was. Did someone have a question, or we're all good? Okay.
We have some questions, but then I think we will let the it might be answered throughout the course of your presentation, so I'm just putting a pause on it.
Okay, all right. So yeah, this is a little bit of history. So yeah, Bill 21 passed 3 readings, but did not receive royal assent. So what we got was the Energy Consumer Protection Act of 2010. So again, that was the one that required the installation of smart meters or suite meters in new condominiums and apartment buildings. For existing condos, the Act allows individual suite meters to be installed with the approval of the condominium board. However, it is not required. That is, the installation of the suite meters is not required. And then later on, they put together the Ontario Energy Board, which is the body that oversees anything to do with a bill or energy metering in the province, put together the Ontario Unit Submetering Code. And the purpose of which was to the unit submetering code is to set up minimum conditions and standards that a licensed unit submeter provider must meet when providing unit submetering service on behalf of exempt distributors. And an exempt distributor in this case being a condominium or apartment building. Yes.
Sorry, there's a follow-up question here from Ken. He's asking, so only condo board approval is needed. Ken, if you want to unmute yourself to give some context to that.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I understood you just said. We don't need, equivalent a declaration change with, 90% of owners or anything like that. It's just condo board.
Exactly. It's just the majority vote of the condominium board. Whatever your condo docs, like anything else that the board takes on, whatever the vote is, it's covered the same way.
Yeah, awesome. That's great news.
And it's one of those things too where I always recommend that if a condo board takes on doing it, keep the residents informed of what's going on. It can be a frightening thing. I've seen them go incredibly well, and I've seen them go terribly badly. But again, if someone needs help with that, I'd be happy to discuss later on in detail too. But yeah,
no,
it's just an
understood.
easy vote.
Understood. Thanks.
Thank you. So, and just to finish to that point, while they did make it very clear for condos, apartments was a little bit more of a wild west. They didn't seem to know what they wanted to do. So we'll go into that a little bit more in detail. So, again, what does submetering offering look like? So Measurement Canada is the federal body that oversees anything to do with the meter in Canada. So if you look at a gas pump, you look at a scale in the store, whatever it is, they all have Measurement Canada stickers on it. And what that means is that a Measurement Canada lab of some kind has tested the meter, found it to be working accurately, and then retests it, with meters that's either 6 or 10 years. Gas pumps and scales are different. So Measurement Canada is the body that oversees it and makes sure everything works accurately and correctly. So what happened is the meters are of course installed, and I'll go into some detail on that later on. Then a monthly fee is charged, and then the electricity cost from the existing meter on the building gets distributed or apportioned to all of the units in the building based on their own usage. So right now you're likely charging by square feet, or you're just charging as a fee in their monthly rents. This way, what it would be is we would be actually doing all of the billing based on their own usage. So on the new construction market, basically what it is if you're putting in a new building, we would sign an agreement with you. We would provide all the metering equipment, everything to do with the metering. We would make sure all the Measurement Canada inspections are done. And then we would pay an installation allowance to the owner of the building for the installation of the equipment. And then once the building goes live, then we are responsible for all of the suite usage. We bill everybody. We charge them a monthly administration fee, which is usually in the $15 to $17 a month range, and plus their apportioned distribution charges. So basically, they're paying us for the meters and the billing and all of those things, which is our $15 to $17. That's the only money we make of it. Everything else is just their electricity usage and their portion of the distribution charges in the building. And the retrofit market is very much the same. Now, I put in the caveat here of 30, most buildings of 30 or more units. We can offer free meters plus free installation. And then we pay the cost of the installation to the building owner developer, whichever the case is. And we would use either your own electrician to do it, or we bring an electrician of our own in to install the meters. We can also add things like water or thermal metering to the process also, which again, I'll get into a little bit more detail. And again, the admin charges usually fall into about the same range.
A question here for you from Andrew Fothergill. Is that $15 to $17 per unit, per utility, or per building?
Per unit per month, yes.
Unit per month, okay.
And that is okay. That would be for, like, let's say electricity only. Water would be likely somewhat less than that, so maybe $10, $12 or in something in that range as an average. And then thermal metering would probably be something more than that. So each utility that we're metering, we have to install a meter, we have to read the meters, we have to do all of those things. Every one of them will have an admin charge. And then, of course, plus the usage charges on top of that. So yeah, it can get expensive if you're looking at a building with all three services, electricity, water, and thermal metering. Yeah, you can get $40 a month or more in fees, which is why there's the only time usually most buildings will want to do all of that stuff is if it's a very competitive area like downtown Toronto, where they're really struggling hard to keep the maintenance fees low. But otherwise, yeah, it can be. Now, again, it's one of those things too. It depends how you look at it. If you're living in a house right now and you have electricity, you have water, and you have gas, for instance, you're paying a monthly fee on all of those things anyway. So it's not like our situation is that much different than what a homeowner in a house would be paying. Again, it's just a little more dramatic when you're getting everything on one bill as compared to three separate bills from three separate utilities. It's a little bit more noticeable, and it can cause the residents to be a little bit more concerned about where the money is going to. So did that answer your question?
Yes, Andrew says same as the actual provider, and it makes sense.
Yeah, we're usually cheaper than the local utilities are. Sometimes dramatically so. Like on electricity, we're about half of what most local utilities charge. So we can do it for less, but it's still, again, the fees can get up there, of course, too, as I said, especially if there's multiple different services. So now apartment market, the apartments can only be submetered or suite metered either when on turnover or by the agreement of the tenant. You cannot force the tenant to switch to submeter. So if you own a building right now, you have your tenants are paying their electricity and their water through their rent. You cannot just force them to swap over. It has been done by some landlords. I know Briar Lane had a lot of success with this at one point, where they would put a good offering together for their tenants and convince them to switch over. But again, there's a fair amount of work involved in that, and most of the landlords just like to do it on turnover if possible. It's just the easiest way to do it. Or again, if it's a new building, or if you're doing a massive rebuild inside a building, then again, it's a good time to do that when the suites are empty. For buildings that have very low turnover, of course, that can be a challenge. If you have one of those, one person per year turns over in your building type of situations, then yeah, it's not going to be quick and easy. If you have a lot of turnover in your building, of course, it's that much quicker and faster. So.
I have a question here.
Yes.
When it comes to, say, in an apartment building, you have one unit that moves out in that 1 year. Can we stagger the implementation of submetering so one unit may have a submeter, but the rest of the units do not?
It's challenging financially just because basically we would have to go in every time, send electricians out, do the work for every one of those units, which drives the cost of doing it up dramatically. If it's a situation, for instance, there are socket meters that are already installed and we just have to plug in a socket meter or something, possibly. Again, that's a discussion to be had. But again, it's easier and cheaper for everybody if we have a good chunk of turnover. And I know what I've done in the past with some buildings will actually, put the turnover date 6 months or a year into the future. So what they can do, what a lot of the landlords I've dealt with have done, is they know they've got a bunch of turnover coming. So anybody new coming in that time period, they'll put them on the new agreement. That includes they have to pay the electricity, or the tenant has to pay the electricity directly to us. And then once we go live, then there's a whole handful of people already who are ready to go at that point.
Okay.
But otherwise, yeah, it can be prohibitively expensive if we're just doing it, one at a time.
Yeah, it can be. Okay, thank you.
Welcome. So what are your benefits? Of course, lowers your operating expenses, shifts the utility costs from the landlord to the tenant, and improving profitability, and reduces for you the unpredictable fluctuations in utility expenses. We live in interesting times right now, and who knows what utility costs are going to do. I know water has gone from a very minor line item to a huge expense for most buildings right now. So it's those fluctuations can be really hurtful, especially in a situation like where you're in, where you cannot just increase rents as you need to cover your costs. Or, if you want to ask for extras, then the government isn't always as accommodating as they could be to those expenses. So second half of that is, of course, is it improves tenant accountability, reduces excessive consumption and wasteful habits, and creates a more responsible tenant community. It's actually interesting how, I'll do point two first of those, but the psychology of people actually seeing what their usage is can cause people to start caring more about what happens in their whole building. So I've seen it, I've heard it from landlords and property managers that, when they've switched over to individual metering, they'll start getting questions from tenants as to why there is so much waste of electricity. For a lot of people, they have never seen a hydro bill before. They have no clue what the costs are. They have no idea that little, shushing noise they hear from the toilet, because the flap isn't engaged properly and the water is running 24/7, that actually accounts for real money. So they start seeing it and they start carrying it and about it. And yeah, there's going to be those people who really don't care, are never going to be concerned, but there's a lot of them who will really take this on and try to do well with it. And then again, as I said, it reduces excessive consumption. And I'm sure I need not tell you guys any stories about people, your tenants wasting your electricity in your buildings. It's or water, or heat, air conditioning, let the heater going full blast and all the windows open, or, leaving all the lights on, TV running, everything going when they leave for work during the day. All of that stuff stops immediately as soon as they start seeing the bill and they start seeing, what their choices, what the consequences are of those financially. And then, of course, finally, it simplifies utility management. So the remote monitoring and automatic billing. So we handle all of that. We give you lots of information as to what's going on in the building and usage in the building. Of course, there's some issues around privacy, but also the Landlord Tenant Act will force you to have information available too, and to give existing tenants, if need be, as to what the electricity use has been in the building in the past. But again, it's that much easier. You see where the electricity is going. You're going to have a reduction because people will definitely not use as much electricity when they're paying for it. And again, why does it make sense? Encourages energy and water conservation, as I said. Like I said, I've had people, we did a big rental building in Mississauga, and one unit, the water was running constantly, and they got a bill, I think it was $300 or $400 for that month. And they were on the phone, of course, yelling at us. That's the big thing of it. This is all our responsibility. So they will not be hopefully yelling at you for those things. But they got the problem sorted out right away. They got the flap. It was a flap in the toilet. What was the problem? They got that fixed immediately. And the next month, their bills were down to normal again, $20, $30, whatever it was. So if they see it, they can impact it, and they will do so. And again, as you all know right now, if they're paying it in their monthly rent, they have no idea what the cost is, and they have no way of changing it. And I've heard too, it's the biggest study was one done by Navigant, which shows a 40% reduction, or up to a 40% reduction in electricity usage in a building with the switch to individual metering. So it definitely does that. And again, it's fair. The residents are only paying for their usage. They're not paying for their neighbors. The person who uses very little, they may only, warm up some food in the morning, make a cup of coffee, go to work. They're gone all day. They watch a little TV at night. When they get home, a couple of light bulbs on, and they sleep, and they use nothing. And someone else in the building is running a business or doesn't care much about what they're doing. They're subsidizing those people. So it usually goes over pretty well that way, and understanding what it is that they're paying for and what their responsibility is.
Eric,
Yes.
there is a question from Ken
Yes.
about how electricity usage is split between tenants in common areas, such as hallways, exterior lights, laundry rooms, and things like that in a condominium.
Yeah, that's actually simple. There's a line item right now for the electricity usage divided by the suites. What happens is just a change is made. So if we figure, for instance, 60% of the electricity in the building is in the suites, what the condo board would do is they would reduce that line item in their budget for electricity from the current year by, let's say, 60%. I recommend going a little bit conservatively in the first year, maybe going 50, 55. But but reducing that line item, so they're still paying in their maintenance fees for electricity used in the hallways, in the garage, in the laundry rooms, and so on. But then everything in their own suite, they cover themselves.
Hi, Eric. It's Ken. Yeah, but when you said 50 or 60%, how did you get that number? Is that just based on an estimate for a given building, or is it like industry standard that's what large
Yeah,
condos, you know?
the on a decent sized building, it's 60/40 is kind of the industry standard. That's where we understand. You usually, I've done so many of them. I can walk into a building and give you kind of good idea what it looks like. I've done engineering studies in the past on buildings where we've had an engineer come in and actually go look at, all the elevator motors and the chiller and the boiler and count all the lights in the garage and come up with an estimate that way of what the electricity usage is. But it's even if you start with the 50/50 split, and again, the size of the building makes a huge difference. The bigger the building is, the less by percentage goes into the common areas. So it can be, I've seen, and once you get into situations like electric heat, for instance, then it can be as much as 80% suite usage and 20% in the common areas. So there's no 100% set rule on it. What we've done with some buildings in the past too is we've actually installed the meters and let them spin for a month or two before going live, just to give the condo corporation an idea of what the usage looks like. So there's ways to do it. There's no 100% way to do it, which is why I recommend going a little conservative in the first year. It's always easier to give money back than it is to take more from them after year one.
Yeah,
But
understood.
yeah, like I said, there's a little bit of crystal balling involved in it, but usually you can get a pretty close estimate as to where you are. And again, as long as you deal with it properly, and again, education of your residents in the building is the most important thing. Let them know what's going on. It takes all the fear away. I was actually responsible probably for the worst disaster that ever happened in the conversion of a condominium building to individual metering. The disaster part wasn't my fault, actually. I didn't know to ask the right questions at that point, though. And what had happened was it was a 90% Chinese building with no Chinese members on the board. And what I didn't realize at that time was there was basically no communication between those two groups within the building. So we thought we were passing on all the information properly, everything was going fine. And then, of course, what happened was that the residents, once they started getting bills, had no idea what was going on. So that's where I learned, is to make sure that the residents know what's going on. I've actually written up information pieces for boards to give out. I've translated them into different, well, not personally translated them. That wouldn't work very well, but I've had them translated into different languages if there's a cultural group within the building that may misunderstand. So it's so much of it, making it go smoothly, is just education and communication. And understanding if there's issues in the building that way that may stop some people from understanding what's going on. One of the things I did too with most of my rental buildings now is I will actually go in once we go live, and for the first couple of nights I'll meet with the residents on a one-on-one basis and just kind of take them through, show them what their bill looks like, give them an idea what they may be paying, show them what they could be doing to conserve energy, just little things like that. And I meet with people, talk with them for 10 minutes. And usually first night I do it, I'm jammed up, everybody coming. Second night is maybe half. Third night, almost nobody shows up. Because of course, the people in the building start talking, they understand there's nothing scary about this, and all the fear goes away. So it isn't a bad thing. I've never had anyone who I've done this for, property managers, board members, I've never had anyone actually tell me afterwards it was a bad idea to do it. There can be some bumps in the road in terms of education and getting the people on board, but again, those are all manageable. Again, as long as you're understanding of the communication challenges in your building. So, but it's always goes well, and the buildings usually end up saving quite well. So
if I could just add to that question, I couldn't find the hand button, apologize.
okay, no.
But similar idea, so I thought now would be a good point, except that it's not a condo. I basically have a house that I'm converting into 3 units,
Yes.
but I have a garage. So I'm going to have submetering for each of the 3 units, but was
Okay.
hoping to avoid another meter for the garage. Would you manage that similar to what you're discussing now, or is it best to have like maybe another meter? Or is there a way to avoid that?
Well, you're going to have a meter from the utility itself too, aren't you?
Um,
Because
we'll
you
have like
probably have,
three meters, I think, for each unit. I don't know how the garage yet will be managed.
well, because you've got probably one bulk meter for the entire house right now, I'm guessing. Is that correct?
Currently, yes, but I
Yeah.
think it's going to be changed to three. I guess it'll be three sub meters and then one main one. I'm not sure.
Yeah, then it's a little bit more of a challenge. You're going to have to find a way to, if you're not having sub-metering usually, and why it's called sub-metering is it works behind the utility meter. So in a situation like this, if your building was to be sub-metered, you would have the one utility meter that would capture everything inside the building. And then you'd have the three sub-meters that would just be measuring the electricity units in those suites. And then anything that was outside of those suites, but within the building itself,
Hmm.
would just be a part missing. So in that situation, if we were doing that, what we would do is we would collect the electricity usage from your three tenants, pay that back to you every month, and that would cover everything except whatever you're using in common areas. Based
Okay, yeah,
on what
that
the
makes
local
sense.
utility tends to do. Yes, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And of course, one of the nice things about this from a landlord perspective is it does increase the value of your building and makes it more attractive to investors. It's just a huge risk that has gone in terms of trying to manage the electricity usage and having tenants who are running businesses or who knows what they're doing from within their unit. So, and the one thing I've seen a lot in the condo world, but is that the people will pick bulk metered buildings, so buildings that are not individually metered, they will pick them because they can run businesses in those buildings and hide. No one will know how much energy they're using. So if you've got a building that is that way, chances are you could have tenants who are looking to take advantage of the free electricity that you're offering. So something to keep in the back of your mind. So now important consideration, and this is, I got some pushback. I got some questions from Chris actually. And if Chris asks a question, then he's someone you will listen to around these things. We've got some pretty definitive state wording from the government that existing apartments where electric baseboard heaters are the primary heat source, they cannot be submetered. The only way you can submeter them is if you actually were to remove the baseboard heating from the submeter itself. So the people still use the heat. The cost of the heat would still be in their rent. And then the plug load, anything they use in the suite other than heat, could be individually metered. But that baseboard heating cannot be. Heat pumps are a little different. There's an interesting loophole for those. Or loophole is the wrong word to use, but there's some interesting possibilities that can make that work. So if it's a heat pump building, then definitely that's something where we could discuss that with you. But other than that, if it's an existing building with just baseboard heaters, then yeah, the government does not want you switching that over, or would allow you to make people responsible for paying the baseboard heating.
I have a question here, Eric.
Yes.
Is it that we're not allowed to put on that cost to the tenant, or is it because of the way it's set up? So basically, let's say if there is a certain amount it costs, and
Mhm.
that cost is then by the property manager or the landlord divided equally among all the units. Is that something that's not allowed, or does that work?
Well, you cannot force the tenant to pay the electric heat in the suite.
Okay, okay.
Yes.
Interesting.
And which is, you would think, the one thing that, should be required, and I understand why you would think that. The biggest, potential source of electricity use would be that. But unfortunately, that's not something they allow for. So,
Yeah. Oh gosh, that's painful.
yes. Yeah, I do feel your pain on that. So, and it is, yeah, you can, and what you'd have to do if you wanted to still submeter the plug load. So again, plug loads being anything plugged into the wall. So whether it's a stove, whether it's a fridge, just their TVs, all of those kind of things. Yes, you could do that part of it. But what you'd have to do is you'd have to divide the electricity. You have to divide out the baseboard heating from the rest of the electricity load and have two separate circuits. The plug load one could then be submetered the baseboard heat would still come out of would still be the landlord's responsibility.
Oh, so that
Yes.
sorry, was that
No, go
Ken?
ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
All right. So when you said that it would be separated, is that another renovation or something that has to be done, or you can?
Exactly.
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
You'd have to figure out how the heating was wired
Mhm.
in that unit, and then run it, run separate feeds likely to those baseboard heaters, and install a breaker just for those that would run off the common area usage of the building.
Oh, that's intense.
Yeah.
Ken here has a question.
Yes.
Comment about tenants having the right to opt out in apartment buildings. Does this apply to condos as well? The ability to opt out?
No. Because a condo corporation, everyone is a part owner of the corporation. They elect the condo board to make decisions on their behalf. So everything, I have never seen a situation where anyone was even able to do that. It's like anything else that the condo corporation decides on the part of the residents.
Within their laws, they have their bylaws in there.
Yeah.
And Arlie, you have a question for Erik, so you can go ahead and unmute yourself and go ahead.
And actually, if I can just back up for just 1 second. And again, too, a tenant can't opt out if they are like a new tenant moving in, for instance, into a building, and their lease agreement includes them paying electricity, then that is just part of the lease, that they're required to do whatever the lease says. So they can't opt out that way. But yes, anyone who's an existing tenant, they could say no to that. So I'm sorry. Yes. So please go ahead with your question.
The question is, I have the one single outside meter.
Yes.
I have it's a 5-unit, and I have 6-meter sockets. So it's
Okay.
all prepared for submetering with blanks on them.
Okay.
So I just have to put the 4-jaw meter in.
Mm-hmm.
I'm allowed to submeter for electric baseboard heat and that because it's all separate panels to each unit.
That's actually something I'm looking into right now in terms of, is that a pre-existing building, or is it the pre-existing lease that is the question? And that is, I haven't gotten an answer to that. I will get back to you all with once I get that sorted out, what the legalities of that are. But it's actually a very, very interesting question.
Yeah, because every unit has a 100-amp main panel.
Yeah.
And everything is fed through that main panel, but it all goes back to a 6-meter submeter base. But I don't have the meters on. I didn't get the meters. Can we purchase our own meters and submeter ourselves? I know you're looking to do it for us, but how far east do you go? Because I'm further. I'm not in the GTA area.
Well, we anywhere in Ontario.
Anywhere in Ontario. Okay.
I'd rather not go to Thunder Bay in February, but but yeah, just my latest I did just a project in Belleville.
Okay.
So, yeah, we're all over the place. So we've got customers in Windsor and so,
well, I'm Ottawa area.
Oh yeah, that wouldn't be a big deal. So
okay,
I'm actually going to see a client in Ottawa in about a week or two. So
okay. Another question I'm having with tenants is the old Chromalox baseboard heaters versus the new high efficiency heaters.
Okay.
They're wanting to go with these high efficiencies because the old ones don't claim they're efficient. What kind of efficiency do you know between an old heater, the old Chromaloxes versus the new, condensed where it comes out the top super hot and so on? Is there any efficiency? Do you know the efficiency between those two?
Well, there's two sides to it. The baseboard heaters are actually very efficient. The only thing is they don't move air around.
Right.
At the surface of the heater, it's a very efficient way of heating, but the heat just kind of sits there. Any of the new fan-powered ones are in a very different world. If they're moving the heat around, then of course you're going to get much more effective heating in the unit with those. Just as a bit of an aside too, I had a gentleman who bought a 60 or 70 unit building in St. Catharines some years ago, and it was electrically heated. And what he went and did is he actually went and ran gas piping on the outside of the building to every unit and installed gas heating units.
Okay.
in the building. And as crazy as that project sounds, it paid for itself in something ridiculous like 2 years.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden he was just laughing. It was, he said, the best thing he's ever done.
Probably a direct vent or something like that, eh?
Yeah. So it was just a lot of piping running on the outside of the building.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
But everything was to code, everything was safe, and he replaced the electric units with gas powered ones,
Mm-hmm.
and away you went. So it was when I heard about it, I thought, no, that's kind of crazy. You can't do that. But
Yeah.
it worked really well for him. So
Okay. Perfect. Thank you.
so there's the electric heating thing, and again, it was a rental building, and he had the same problem that he didn't believe that the tenants were always keeping his best interest in mind.
Right.
When it came to their electricity usage. So he
Yes.
wanted to do what he could. So we went and put in meters then for all of the plug loads, and he switched the units over to gas heating, and the building is just saving money like crazy now.
So is he central metering the gas? Like submetering the gas?
No, I don't think he was sub-metering the gas. It was just so much cheaper at that point already.
Right.
Even the savings on that worked. Submetering of gas is something we've done. The only challenge with submetering of gas is that there are no compact gas submeters.
Okay.
So if I don't know if you guys can see me there or not. A gas meter is about yay big. It's 2 feet tall by 1.5 feet wide or whatever it is. And they're usually either hidden on an outside wall or down in an underground garage or something. There used to be some more compact ones about the size of a thermos, but those were eliminated in Canada. So there's always a challenge with individual gas metering of actually finding the space to put the meters.
Well, don't they also step down the pressure too?
Yeah, they would. Yes, yeah. But
Okay.
even it's just the challenge of there's very limited supply of meters. It seems to take forever to get them now.
Yes.
And they're just not small. So it's just finding a place to do that. But again, if it's on a building like that, 70-unit building burning electricity like crazy, making that switch, that definitely makes sense. So
yeah. Could you comment if an old baseboard heater versus a new, is there much difference in efficiency? Like should I
just the baseboard heater?
Yeah, just the heater, no fan, nothing.
It should be pretty close to the same other than wear and tear.
Yes.
And dirt on it. So that it's not really doing anything that different.
Yeah.
Than what the old one was doing. So the old one, the resistance could be higher, or it could be just covered in dust and dirt and grime.
So moving the air is the caveat to this, is getting the air moving, distributing.
Exactly. Yeah. Otherwise, it could be slightly more efficient, but it's not going to be dramatic. You're still stuck with that one. There's nothing really to move the air around.
Yes. Okay.
And eventually it will, but it's not going to be any sort of dramatic change.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome. So water metering is another interesting challenge. Water metering, again, as everyone knows, water prices have gone up insanely over the past years. Water metering is usually even more of a challenge than electricity is, because the way a lot of buildings were built in the past, that the water piping goes from one unit to the next. It isn't broken out individually. The way, for instance, on a modern high-rise building, the way they're building them now, instead of having the risers going up and down through the building, they have kind of a riser doing a horizontal wrap on every floor, and then every unit gets 1 feet off of that. So then that's really easy to meter the water off of. You just put 1 meter if it's just cold water, or 2 meters if it's hot and cold, right where the water goes into the unit, and away you go. But again, if you've got a building, for instance, like one of the old ones with a kitchen and two bathrooms, and there's 6 pipes of water going up, a hot and a cold in each unit or in each room, you're going to be putting 6 meters on to capture all that water usage, and then the cost of doing it, you'll have $20 worth of water usage and $70-80 worth of fees to capture all that information and install the meters. So water is a bit of an interesting challenge. If you're doing a major renovation in a building, it's one of those things where it may be worthwhile to take a look at, can you redo that? I've had some landlords who have actually done that. And again, water is almost easier in some ways to, drive up ridiculous amounts of usage than electricity is. Just because, again, people leave water running, or again, those toilet flaps, those things are just insane. How much water usage or water wastage those things can cause. So it's a wonderful thing if you can do it. Like I said, it's a little bit more challenging in terms of on an older building, on a retrofit building, making it happen. If you're looking at building something new, then it's a piece of cake to install. So something to keep in mind. If it works in your building, then by all means, I would strongly recommend looking at water metering also. So this is a bit of a picture, an overview of what a metering system looks like in a building. So there we've got maybe 120 unit building or something like that. In a building of that size, you're going to have a meter closet on every floor, every other floor where the circuit breakers are for the units. The meters are installed there. The meters are about 1.5 feet, 2 feet high by about 1 foot wide. So they're not very big. And one box like that can do anywhere from 12 to 24 different units. So it's 24 actual separate meters installed into one little box. So we're not having to do something like adding a whole wall full of the old glass meters, round meters, to capture all of that. So with one compact box, we use what are called current transformers, or little donuts. We put them around the wires, so we don't actually, we read through the wire. We don't break into the wires. We don't cut into the wire. The CT just reads the amount of current going through the wire. And so it's a very nice, simple, clean installation. And then we've got a communication device, the one here showing on the bottom by the main switchboard where the transponder is. We dial into that every day, and we pull out the information, and we can bill people on a daily or an hourly basis, however the need is. So this is another type of meter. This is the Triacta gateway meter, which is actually made up in Ottawa. The cutting edge. There's actually even some newer technology than that. That's one probably we use more than anybody else or any other meter. As you can see, it's really about maybe 2 feet wide by 20 inches tall or something along those lines. I'm showing my age talking in inches here, but so what do we say? 60 inches wide by 45 inches or centimeters high. I'm sorry. But again, it's the same type of idea. They're all individual meters inside there. There's a display on the front with the arrows on it, the arrow button, so you can scroll through and see the usage in every unit. Each meter is completely separate than any others, and everyone is read individually. So there is no overlap whatsoever between one unit and the next. So to give you an idea, on the left is the old-fashioned way of doing it. There's a half a dozen socket meters with their socket bases and everything. On the right is that one dark gray box in the middle, can capture 2 to 3 times as much as what all the socket meters on the left will do. So I'll give you an idea how compact it is. So it really means, especially on retrofits, it's very, very easy to install into a building. We're not using up tons and tons of space for it. So Residential Tenancies Act. I won't go through this in a lot of detail. It's probably something you want to look at yourself. And again, I will never claim to be an expert on the RTA, but basically, so you can get a tenant to agree to suite. Now, I've used suite meters, I've used individual meters and sub meters. Effectively, they all are the same thing, just different terminologies, different slightly different ways they're used. But in case you're wondering if there's a difference between them, effectively no. So you can do it. You have to get a tenant's approval. So now either you get an existing tenant, you get them to sign a form saying that they will agree to switch over to individual metering, and you have to do a rent reduction for that. Or for a new tenant, you can bring them in, and just as a part of their lease, they have to cover the electricity in their suite. So it's just just a part of their existing lease going forward. So there are prospective tenant. I'll send out what the government has too in terms of the documents on this. I'll send that out to everybody afterwards also, so you can kind of go through a little more detail. But again, you have to have the tenant's consent. You cannot force them to do this. And especially on a retrofit situation, the rent must be reduced if the tenant consents. So you have to take out, you have to figure out an estimate of how much electricity they were paying before, and then and that's on an average basis because there's no way to know what it is per unit. But you'd have to do a rent reduction of that amount, and then they would be responsible for anything from then on. So Any questions on that part? I probably shouldn't ask that question because I'm not the best person to answer it, but again, we'll send and we're doing some more digging into this. We got a legal opinion on it a couple of years back. There may have been some changes which we're trying to sort out right now too. So we'll be back in touch with you with more information.
Arlie has a question.
Yes.
Arlie's asking, if they do not pay these bills, can you shut the hydro off for that one specific tenant?
Yes.
There you go.
Within the rules of what the OEB allows, but in general, yes.
When it comes, and now I have a question. When it comes to rent reduction, is that something that you advise them on? Because, how does the landlord determine how much the rent is reduced by?
From my understanding, what you're allowed to do is you can figure out how much you're charging them. Yeah, you have to, show the math on how you on how much you charge them for every unit at the previous year before they went to individual metering. Show them the calculations, what the for instance, if you're charging every unit $50 per month for electricity, you would be removing that $50 per month, which would be a fair approximation of what it is, and then you would they would be paying that reduced amount plus their electricity on top. Now you do have to cover the cost, so our fee has to be covered in the rent reduction, but any late fees, any interest, anything like that does not have to be. So basically, for the tenant who is switching over, they have to be made whole. They do have the opportunity, of course, to conserve and save even more money if they want to, or if they choose to burn electricity, then they'll pay more for it. But when the transition time comes for an existing tenant, you have to make them whole for what the cost will be switching over on an average basis.
And Arlie then added a comment about not in winter, I guess because we're not allowed to shut off hydro during the winter time.
Yeah, there's some metering companies that have slightly different rules around that. And to be honest, we don't have to do a lot of shutdowns. The threat of turning power off is usually good enough to do it. The Ontario Energy Board has a lot of rules. We give notifications, calls, letters. We'll hang a door hanger on their door saying, hey, if you don't pay by this and this time, then the electricity will be turned off. So there's a lot of steps we can take. And again, those are our steps and our worries in terms of chasing the people down from that. That's not something we really involve you in. If we're going to have to shut someone's power off, of course, we'll let you know that. But it's again, it's our job to chase them and try to get them to pay.
When you say that there are different rules for submetering when it comes to shutting off hydro, could you elaborate on that?
That's a pretty deep conversation around where that goes, and some of that is a little bit in flux right now. But the utilities have much stricter rules what they can do in terms of shutting off power. And I can send out some more detailed information on that part of it too. So
that would be interesting.
Yeah.
And then Ken again,
yes.
Safe to assume that a building owner or property manager see all units so the building owner or property manager will have access to the electricity usage data. Is that is correct, right?
Yeah, there's some interesting on a condominium building, definitely that there's privacy rules involved in that in terms of what data can be shared. In a rental building, it's the landlord who owns the building. Theoretically, there's some privacy rules in place, but the other side of it is the landlord also has to have that information available so that they can share it with incoming tenants as to what the usage is. So yeah, we would definitely help on that side of it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Question.
Yeah, and one of the challenges, of course, is that we have 3 different levels of government with very different rules and standards who are involved in the whole process.
Yeah.
So nothing is ever as quite as easy as it could be.
Yep. I think a lot of landlords are very intimately connected with this reality.
Yes. Yeah, because the RTA is a totally different thing than the Ontario Energy Board's submetering code. And of course, then Measurement Canada as a federal body, they're just like an engineering organization more than anything else. So they all have very, very different priorities and very different concerns. So it's they overlap reasonably well, but there are always issues where things aren't quite as clear as they should be. And of course, regulations can change and interpretations of regulations can change. So we're always trying to stay on top of what it is. And it's like I said, I got some information from Chris yesterday that's got me looking back into it again right now. So we'll definitely be back to you with more information on that. And again, we look at this very much as a partnership between us and our customers, whether it's the end use customer or the landlord who owns the building in this case, or a property manager or a condo board. So we want to make sure this is as easy and as painless for you as possible. So there's, again, different rules for current tenants and prospective tenants. So again, the prospective tenant one, as I said, was they have to provide the prospective tenant information about the electrical usage for the unit. So what it has been for the past year, if I remember correctly, past 12 months, and then the electrical efficiency of the refrigerator. And then for current tenants, again, it's dramatically more onerous. And you got to get consent in writing, rent reductions, all of those things. So, again,
Erik,
yes,
question there in the previous slide.
yes,
Mentioned specifically about a refrigerator.
yes.
Is that just the one appliance that needs to be highlighted, or?
That's the one appliance, apparently, yes.
Okay.
Well, I guess it's the one everybody has to have.
Yeah.
It kind of runs like you could, I guess theoretically you could, leave the door closed and not use much power, but I guess there's always going to be some power use compared to an oven or a stove. If you don't turn it on, you're not going to use anything at all. So it's the one item in the unit that will run regardless of whether you choose to use it or not.
Okay. Yeah, that is true.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, one of those weird things, but that's the one. And I know a lot of landlords usually seem to keep their refrigerators fairly up to date, just from an energy usage cost perspective. So, keeping that information on hand, though, if you put new ones in, is a good idea. Keeping it filed somewhere so that in case you need it in the future, you have it.
Interesting. Okay, awesome. Thank you.
So, here's like an overview of what our offering would look like or how it would work. And I'll go through this a little bit later on and let you have a look at the questions. Maybe what I'll do is I'll ask you all to do some homework, take a peek through it, and see how it all works for you. But basically, what we do is if someone reaches out to us and wants us to look at metering their building, we'll ask them some basic questions on the size of the building. Usually about 20 to 30 units is where it starts getting, there's enough units there to start making it less expensive. There's fixed costs to doing every project. And the less units there are, the less units there are, the higher per suite those fixed costs become. So once we get up to 20 or 30 units, it becomes really easy to hide those fixed costs in the fees for the unit. If we're in a lower unit, a 6 or an 8 or a 10, whatever the case may be, the fixed cost, we may end up in a situation where we're going to be asking the landlord for some sort of, to pay some portion of it to get it going, just because there won't be enough. Otherwise, we'd have to put our fees up so high that it would be unfair to the tenant in the end. So, but again, it's very much on a case-by-case basis. So once it happens, what we do is we'll visit the site. We'll take a look at the infrastructure in the building. We'll make sure that the meters can fit, that the building is, as much as we can tell, has the suites individually broken off into a breaker. And then once all that's done, we give a proposal to the condo corporation or to the landlord. They will review that, see if it makes sense, if they like what we're offering. Then we'll put a contract together. Contracts usually start at about 10 years. And again, depending on what we're doing, if we're trying to divide some costs over higher time, then the contracts can be longer too. So we always make sure that our rates are equal to or less than, and usually we try to be well less than what the incumbent utility would be. So if for instance you're in Pickering and Pickering is charging $35 a month as a fee for the water service, we would make sure that ours is at least 35 or less. Like I said, usually it's dramatically less. The capital contribution, as says here, can often be required for a small building. And again, the buildings are so much on a case-by-case basis. It's hard to speak to what what they could be or what is required. I had a lady call me this afternoon who was hoping to be here tonight but couldn't. She's having some computer problems. So I'm going to go take a look at her building in Oshawa on Thursday and see what the situation looks like there. So it's there's no easy way. Like I said, as the buildings get newer and as they get bigger, they become easier to kind of sort out how they'll work. But especially on smaller buildings, it's very much on a case-by-case basis.
Mm.
And then, of course, we would do the design of the whole metering system. We would supply all the metering equipment. We would make sure all the Measurement Canada inspections are done, both of the meters and the installation itself. Then we would we'd work with the landlord to set up the new tenant accounts and make sure that the tenant assumes responsibility for their unit and for their electricity consumption. The only thing, of course, we ask is if you have any information that someone's moving out of a suite, for instance, or something of that kind, you let us know that that's happening.
Eric, a question from Ken
Yes.
based on the rates that you mentioned earlier. So when you say rates, do you mean cost per kH?
No, the electricity costs are set by the Ontario Energy Board. We don't fiddle with that at all. That's just a pass-through. The only thing we make money of is we charge our monthly administrative cost. And that covers the equipment, the installation of the equipment, design of the metering system, and then customer service, billing, all of that. Everything we do is in that one cost. All the rest of it we don't do anything with.
All right. Ken
So
says
we don't mark up anything like that at all. So
awesome. Good stuff.
So and again, this is what we're looking at right now. We'll probably send this out to you because I'm going long already. Me talking too much, it's hard to believe, but it appears to have happened. But what we'll do is, again, for smaller buildings, we'll probably do is send out something like a questionnaire like this. And, address, number of units. The unit numbers are actually important, so we have an understanding of where, who we're going to be building and if there's any weird unit number things going on in the building. If there are plans for significant renovations in the near future, are there any vacant units when you're looking to complete the submetering project, and then contact information. And then a bunch of questions around the building. And again, the more of those things we can get answered, especially on a smaller building, the easier it is for us and the quicker we can get a response. So if we'll send this out to everybody, if they can take a look and maybe give us some feedback. Is there too much information? Are the questions too technical? It all seems, of course, very easy to us because we do this every day. But for other people, it may be a little bit more challenging. So we'd love to get some feedback from you as to how this works, if it's possible to do or not, or if we're asking for too much already.
Eric, I have a question here. So for some landlords and property managers, these might come easily and some not.
Exactly.
So is there a way that, if they have to answer these questions, what kind of support do they have from your team to answer these questions?
It's, again, what we're trying to do with this is to reduce the cost as much as possible. If we have to come visit a building, then there's an extra cost for us in doing so, which has to get added into the project cost. So if you've got a handyman, you've got a superintendent who's in the building, something like that, someone who's been doing the work for them, they can often answer those questions also. And if not, we'll make it work. So we'll work with you to make sure we have all the information for it.
Okay.
So this is just an attempt to make it as inexpensive as possible for for everybody involved.
So these are questions that you ask before offering a quote.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Sounds good. Andrew Fothergill has a question.
Yes.
It's regarding the admin costs that Alliance has on each tenant.
Yes.
Does your admin cost get added to the utility admin costs, or do you replace them?
The utility would only charge one admin fee for the whole building. Ours would be on top of that. So the utility would not be charging, if the utility just had a bulk meter in place on the building, they would be charging one admin fee for the entire building. And they would not be charging an admin fee for every unit. Ours would be on top of that or separate to that.
And Andrew says, understood. Sounds good.
Excellent. So this is one of my favorite projects. I did this one back, 2008, 2009, wherever it was. Monster of a project, 5 and 7 Concorde Place, 825 units in those two towers. And it was one of the best property managers who I'd ever dealt with, super in tune with his building, did everything he could to reduce energy consumption. The year before he did suite metering, he actually put programmable thermostats into every unit. He did training sessions on the programmable thermostats for all the residents in the building. This is a condo building. He had them installed. He had them programmed to whatever temperature they were comfortable with. So a year later, when he did his yearly inspection, he had them take a look at the programmable thermostat, and over 80% had been bypassed. So with all of that work he did, people were still bypassing it. They weren't bothering. They weren't trying to conserve any energy. So which is why I started looking at submetering. So anyway, we went live with this project on December 1st. We had in the weeks up to we had some training sessions with the residents, again expressed to them what they could do to conserve energy. So this was Brookfield who actually managed this building back then. So it was those two Brookfield towers, and there was a smaller, about 100 unit building next door. And what happened on the evening of December 1st is the property manager of the smaller building called over to the property manager of the big building. This is about 5:30 in the evening, and said, "Hey, what's going on in your building?" And the manager at 5 and 7 Concorde said, "Nothing I know of." Why? He says, "Well, your building is dark." So what had happened was, for the first time those people were paying electricity, when they went to work in the morning, they all shut off those lights. So 825 units worth of light pollution gone in one day as soon as people knew that they were responsible for it. And that's how quickly submetering works. When people know that they're paying for it and they're on the hook for it, they will change their behavior, and they'll change it right away.
That's really something.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. So and Rick, who was the property manager there, he was so good and tried absolutely everything he could do to get people to conserve, and they just wouldn't do it again until they got responsibility for their own usage. And it's from a psychological perspective, it's interesting too. Everybody, once they start into being responsible for their own electricity usage, they think that everyone else in the building is stealing from them. So it's just, they know that they're the good one and everyone else is a crook. So they love the idea of being responsible for this. One interesting little tidbit, which is not here, but what I've seen throughout buildings for years and years and years, is that there's a breakdown in electricity consumption in the buildings, and how it usually works is 75% of the people in the building use half the electricity, and the other 25% use the other half. So basically what you have is 75% are paying for the electricity consumption of the other 25%. And so what happens when we switch over to individual metering, usually what happens with these buildings is the 75%, they do fine off it right away, because that cross subsidization of the wasters goes away immediately. The other 25%, and within the 25, it even breaks down to half and half. So there's a 10% of the people in the building are using 25% of the electricity of the entire building. Those people are going to pay more, but that's their choice. If they want to pay more, they can, or if they don't want to, they can change their electricity usage, and they can save money that way. And again, a lot of it is not that people are trying to take advantage of the situation. A lot of it is just people don't understand. If they've never paid a hydro bill in their life, and they just don't get how their choices affect things. I had a couple, and they were just a couple of real estate agents, and they said they were basically, in the morning they made their coffee, they had their computers plugged in, their phones plugged in, they were gone all day, came back in the evening, usually they ate out, so they didn't cook much. So they should have been as low a user as possible. But they were using, their first bill was over $425 in electricity use. This is going back 10 years now. And so we kind of started, I was talking to them, I was doing my one-on-one sessions with them and saying, okay, well, how, what are you using? Do you have any big, energy users and use, separate heating, anything that creates heat uses a lot of electricity. Went through everything with them. Nope, nothing. They're not using anything. And then the wife said to me, it was the husband and wife who were there. She said, "Well, our son, he's got the server rack that's about 6 feet high in the spare bedroom. Would that use a lot of electricity?" And yep, there we go. They had told the kid that, yeah, you can bring over a server, plug it in their spare bedroom. They didn't even think about it.
Oh,
And he was using $400 worth of electricity a month that everyone else in the building had been paying for. So. Yeah, and it's just people don't see it. They don't get what the waste is. So But so yeah, benefits again, at least a 20% reduction is pretty standard in electricity usage, and we've seen as much as 40. Navigant did the biggest study on suite metering and the effects of it, and they came up with an almost 40% reduction in electricity use after, I think it was 39.5% in the first year, and then just I think a percent lower in the second, and then back up to close to 40 again in the third. So, and as I said before, with my other example, behavior change happens immediately. People just need to know that they're responsible, and it's going to cost them money. So again, the building becomes easier to manage. And on a condo basis, I know definitely from my understanding of how rental building math works, the value of your building will go up because again, the tenants are paying their own electricity. But I've also talked to the condo owners prefer to move into buildings with individual metering because they have a better handle on what their usage is going to be going into the future. They're not going to be surprised with any big maintenance fee increases. So a list of the companies we've dealt with, and the ones I've dealt with are many, many more, of course. And there we are. There's our friend again, my contact information, and we're always here to help you however we can.
Thank you so much for tuning in today. I hope you've learned at least one new concept. Please consider subscribing or giving us a thumbs up so we keep sharing high-quality educational courses on Openroom University. Check out our other videos to make sure you stay informed. If you've got feedback or just general ideas for my team at Openroom.ca, please send it to us at hello@openroom.ca. Cheers to a transparent and connected rental ecosystem.